You need a lit torch. That's the law. Oh, you're ugly. Now I know why you wanted to be in the dark.
Look away, I'm hideous.
Thanks to my mates at Plaion ANZ, they asked if I'd like to take a look at the upcoming release developed by Warhorse Studios in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, a story-driven simulator RPG set in medieval Europe, and if the title of the game didn't give it away, this is obviously a sequel to the first game in Kingdom Come Deliverance. Now, I'll be doing a review-like video later on, but here it's just a preview video as well as some of my first impressions during, say, the 10 hours or so that I've already played with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which, to make it a bit quicker, I might just refer to as Deliverance 2, but my first impressions are, this is impressive. As a sequel to the first game, the story here is you continue as the character of Henry, who at the start of this story has set out on a simple delivery mission where you need to deliver a letter and return back. And in this opening sequence, if you will, Henry is a bodyguard to someone who can only be described as Prince Charming from Shrek 2.
Chili rings.
I'll have the medieval meal.
Yeah, one medieval meal.
It is a pretty straightforward opening premise, but well, it's not simple, as the party that Henry is travelling with is attacked, Henry takes a tumble off a cliff with a bandit, and well, the important letter that he needs to deliver has been stolen.
It's pretty standard, really.
So from here, after Henry's wounds have healed, we set out to make contact with Lord Otto von Bergrove, who was the recipient of said stolen letter, but it is a little harder than just rocking up at his castle and meeting with him, seeing as your horse, your clothes, your weapons, well, anything tying you to, say, acting as a bodyguard to a stuck-up fancy boy has been taken away from you, and you look a bit like a street rat.
Do you know who I am?
No, we fucking don't!
So the castle isn't letting you in, and with that, your first main mission is to find a way to speak with Lord Otto von Bergrove.
Isn't that?
Otto.
Hey! Go!
Gameplay wise though, if you've not played one of these games before, like myself, what can you expect? Well, I would say think Skyrim, if you will. It is a first-person medieval game. You can't go into third person here, but there's no orcs or elves or fantasy or anything like that, if you will. However, Deliverance 2 is super realistic, more so like a in-depth, involved simulator. You're not just playing a medieval video game, you are surviving in this world. Combat, well, it's first person For Honor. Now, if you don't know what that is, it was Ubisoft's somewhat entertaining dueling game where knights and samurais and more would face off. It was pretty damn cool in my opinion, but the combat is similar to that, where you need to attack and block areas of your enemy, sort of like you can aim for their heads, their arms, or their chests, and you need to defend your relevant areas too. The combat as well, I found, was a bit like, say, Ghosts of Tsushima, where if you run in swinging, you will tire yourself out pretty quick, and you'll be unable to block or counter any attacks, and you'll lose health really damn quick in this game. And with no stamina, you leave yourself wide open to any and all attacks. And combat, I found, needs to be handled a little bit like a boss fight in something like, say, Elden Ring, if you will, as one-on-one fights aren't too bad, but a two-on-one fight I found could be a real uphill struggle, or at least it was for me. During the 3-hour prologue though, you'll learn the basic fundamentals of combat, attacking, blocking, parrying, and maybe it took me about 10 minutes to, say, get the hang of or to understand. I'm still learning to, say, wrap my head around it, because it can be unforgivingly brutal and a bit random in some instances too.
Fucking hell.
But the combat isn't just about countering, blocking, and attacking. Well, it is sort of the main mechanics, if you will, but you'll also need to pay attention to what gear enemies are wearing, such as armor and shields. If you're facing off against a simple bandit, they're most likely just wearing some robes and maybe a bit of leather. But if they're in chainmail and plate armor, it's more of a challenge because they have more defenses that you need to break through first. Outside of the combat though, the world and sandbox that Deliverance 2 is set in is visually stunning. There are heaps of different towns and farms and villages and castles and such to visit, each with their own vendors and guards and reputation system as well. But graphically, as you can see, it is a damn damn pretty game. The light comes through the trees, there's dark forest, there's blades of grass, it all looks really damn good, and you will be seeing a lot of it because in the first 5 to 6 hours, you'll be walking everywhere until you get your horse, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of, say, Red Dead Redemption 2, in that you'll be doing a lot of traversal in the first few hours of the game, but it's also sort of like really relaxing traversal. Thankfully, if you don't want to walk everywhere, there is a fast travel system, and once you've visited a town or location for the first time, you can open your map and travel to that destination. So rather than making the long-ass walk from one city to another, you can quickly fast travel, and this will progress the time of day 2. And depending on when you use the fast travel can determine, say, how dangerous it is, or at least that's how I felt. For example, if you fast travel during the night, I found it was easier to get stopped by bandits on the road. And let's just say I died a fair bit anytime I faced off against a bandit on the road.
What the fuck happened?
Hey!
Now, speaking of dying, and that can be pretty frequent here, but the game will only save when you either sleep in a bed that you own, you progress in a mission, or you drink a saving schnapps, which you need to make yourself, as the game does not have a quick save feature. And I did find myself getting a bit frustrated with dying a few times whenever I'd say, I found a few towns and I explored, then I was killed by bandits on the road, and I had to start back at my previous save, which was about 20 to 30 minutes prior.
Go to hell! Here! I bash you in the
Now, the opening 3 hours or so of the game is sort of the opening prologue, if you will, and the story and voice acting here, and even some of the visuals when it comes to character animations and cutscenes are really impressive, but the opening prologue is, let's say, maybe about 3 hours, but I found that I was only playing about 45 minutes with hands-on gameplay, because the rest were cutscenes and dialogue options that you get to select, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of, say, Metal Gear Solid 4 with how many cutscenes there are. I did, however, find that once the prologue was done, the game does open up a bit and let you tackle the main story and the events however you want. And after a few failed attempts at understanding what to do, I found myself working for a blacksmith, and the mini games and the crafting system as a blacksmith I actually found was super fun, and I've never found blacksmithing fun in any game prior to this, to the point where Mrs. Dudi kept asking me why she hears banging and dinging of metals constantly from upstairs. Now, this is a preview video, it is not a review. This is my first impressions of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, but it is a serious sim of a medieval adventure title like Skyrim. That's probably, say, the best way to describe it. Now, it's also maybe got a touch, a drop, if you will, of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle or Alien Isolation's vibes, and that you'll see everything that Henry does, from something small as, say, opening a door, or to washing himself, because you can get dirty and covered in blood. And the small little thing that I like to enjoy is if you look down, you can actually see your feet and your gear, and I kind of like that attention to detail. Now, say, just like playing Fallout on harder difficulties as well, you need to manage your stamina and health with eating food. If you get, say, stabbed as well by a sword, you will start to bleed, and if you don't use a bandage to stop the bleeding, you will bleed out and die. If you've eaten, say, not fresh food or spoiled food, you'll then need to drink a potion that will settle your stomach, otherwise you can die from food poisoning, because there's a lot to manage here in this game. And while there is a prologue, once you've gotten out of it, the game doesn't overly hold your hand, as there are a load of mechanics to learn and experiment with, like sharpening swords, repairing clothing and armor, an inventory and skill system, which is fairly in-depth. And, I mean, I said it once and I'll say it again, but the combat system is unforgiving. I did, though, find myself, in some instances, struggling to continue and to get hooked in its story, until I got to the town of Serene and started doing some missions with the Lord and the Master Guard of the city, if you will, and found that the way that they spoke to the character of Henry was sort of like what I needed. They kind of had that vibe of when you say, start a new job, go to a new gym, whatever it is, and you've got those folks that just help people out and you get comfortable with them, and their banter was top notch, and I actually really enjoyed sort of doing missions and working with these guys.
I've got something else for you as well. My shield.
Isn't that a bit...
Sir, my left shoulder's fucked anyway. I can't carry no shield.
True enough.
That's probably also something that really surprised me as well, but it also kind of had me laughing a bit frequently too, is the dialogue in the game. Now, while I dreaded being stopped by bandits on the road while fast traveling, the commentary that enemies make is pretty damn funny, I'll give it that.
Go fuck yourself!
But from my first 10 hours of gameplay, and I'm creeping and edging my way further into the story and falling into its world and lore a bit, there is a lot to unpack here. So stay tuned for my review or thoughts or overall vibes of the game, but I think it's kind of safe to say that if you enjoyed Kingdom Come Deliverance 1, then the sequel will probably be up your alley. But whether you've just enjoyed being a simple blacksmith selling swords and horseshoes, or you decided that you wanted to beat up a guard because of what they said, always remember to play with each other and play with yourself.